Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Teaching Tax Flow Podcast, episode 171. We are diving into a topic we have all been sitting in that seat for at some point or another, and that is exactly how do you go about choosing a tax professional, or tax pro, as we say for short. CPA, EA, you might learn a couple things about those as well, but we're going to talk about some of the questions you might ask when you're quote unquote interviewing this person that you will probably tell more potentially about your tax situation, financial life, than maybe even your spouse. So we're going to dive into this. You're going to hear it from somebody who I couldn't think of anybody else that would know more about the situation. As always, Chris McCuro, welcome back to the show, man. How's it going?
Oh, it's great to be back. This is a subject that I am excited to talk about with you. Thank you for the introduction. And you're right. I've been a CPA for more than 25 years. You mentioned something that made me cringe a little bit, but in a good way, when you say that as a taxpayer, some of the things you should think about when you're interviewing a tax professional. I'm going to let you out a very dirty secret. Trust me, your tax professional, potential tax professionals interviewing you, if just as much, if not more than you are them for the right fit. So we are in a tough situation right now. There is no such thing as an easy tax return. We have two issues right now. I'm talking about in the CPA community, but that transcends into enrolled agents. Enrolled agents are IRS licensed specialists in tax who are credentialed. They are amazingly talented people. We have, John, kind of in our other world, we're fortunate enough to run a mastermind group of about 20 other tax professionals that own firms, many super talented enrolled agents. You and I, just in our other hat we wear, we speak to about 300 to 400 tax professionals a year. So we have a very good pulse of what's going on out there. And ultimately, what you're looking for as a taxpayer is a good fit. Back to the CPA side, we have two issues in the CPA world that are just facts. We have something called a retirement cliff. 75% of CPAs are going to retire in the next 15 years. We also have a pipeline issue. We have less people sitting for the CPA exam. And that is also goes into, enrolled agents as well. Tax attorneys can help you out, but make sure and remember, just because you call yourself a tax professional, quote unquote, doesn't make you a pro. So be very aware of the different types of credentials and experience as a taxpayer before you start working with a tax professional. And unfortunately, in many areas, tax professionals are not as regulated as far as from a continuing education perspective as others. If I'm a taxpayer, I'm only going to work with a CPA, an enrolled agent, or a tax attorney. That's just my own personal opinion. And you nailed it, John. Your tax professional is a very trusted person in your life. Think about your tax professional knows more about you, John, honestly, financially, than your spouse sometimes, than anyone else in your life, than your banker, than your doctor, than a lot of than your family members. So this is important. And as I said, you have a retirement cliff. Take the mentality that you are partnering with your tax professional. Okay, that is so important. And they have to be the right fit for you. We talk about all the time, we have some kind of funny content out there, but I talk about all the time that your tax professional is similar to picking the right shoe. If you can walk around barefoot, i.e. prepare your own return. And if you're walking around the house on carpeting, you don't have young kids that are going to leave a Lego on the ground or a dog toy. Unfortunately for us, we've got some of those little dog toys you get step on. That might be a good fit for you. Maybe you could prepare your own return. But once things get a little stickier, a little more complicated, you might need some flip-flops, right? Let's say you're walking on pavement and it's warm. You might need a pair of tennis shoes you might need a sturdy boot. Okay, so making sure you have the right fit of tax professional is so important. And when we talk about the right fit, we came up with an acronym in Teaching Tax Flow called TAX. I know, really, that's pretty unique, right? But it stands for the three things you're looking for when you're picking a tax professional: trust, accreditation, X factor. So number one, they have to have trust. You have to have their trust. Trust is established by one feeling that they are they that what I mean, one of the things we talk about in our private practice all the time is transparency of cost. You might not like the cost of something, but it's important to be transparent. Can you imagine going to the grocery store and never looking at what something costs, just throwing it in your or going to buy clothes? And unfortunately, I'm not in a situation where I cannot look at the tag of seeing how much it costs. 99% of people look at their tag and say, how much is this going to cost me? I might need some milk and say, oh, I can't believe how, my kids would call me a boomer, right? I can't believe how much milk is now, or gas, right? But you're still going to, would you ever go to a gas pump and just fill up your gas tank without looking at at least looking at the price? We might not like the price. But we need gas. So being transparent in costs is a great way to establish trust and understand that, even though if you're working with a tax professional that you think, oh man, I'm only paying them $100 to do this return. It might sound good, but that tax professional, there's no way they're going to be able to service you doing $100 tax returns for everyone. And they're not going to have the technology, the resources to invest in data security and technology. It's just the economics just don't work unless they're retired and they're just doing it for fun.
Right. And before we move on to the other acronyms too, I think this is very, very heavy in the trust area, right? And I'm speaking with the taxpayer hat on. If you're looking at this from that perspective, say, I imagine most of our listeners are taxpayers, even tax pros are, but
Right.
think about it, right? Like you're working with somebody. If you're looking for somebody just to check that tax box, which, as you know, and everything teaching tax flow, we don't recommend it. There's opportunities there. Don't need to go into it. But I imagine that nobody says, "Hey, there's opportunity out there. I just, I'm going to ignore it, and I don't care about future years." If you find somebody that you trust, and with that, it's more. There's a lot of things, right? And we'll get into the X factor. I don't want to dive into that too much, but somebody that really understands you, what your growth goals are, your spending, any of this stuff, right? You, Chris, right, as a tax pro, you might look at me and say, you know what, John, I don't know if you've thought about this, but in 5 years, you might want to do blank. Why don't we start looking at that now? And that is going to drastically impact everything you do. But if I didn't have you in my life, right, and say I was just going online or checking this stuff off, doing it, I'm missing out on a ton. uh, so ignorance is not bliss in
Well,
this situation.
in this episode is how to pick the right tax professional, not necessarily tax preparer. Tax
Right.
professionals can either focus on preparation, they can focus on planning. We know planning and preparation complement each other. And like you said, John, some tax professionals strictly focus on tax preparation. There's nothing wrong with that. So when it comes to tax planning and strategy, they might have to bring in another resource or partner with someone else, or that they might not be a good fit for you. Don't that's You can't go to a restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, and demand pizza. Like they don't
Right.
have it. Go to a
And
pizza place,
the way
okay?
you explain that is absolutely perfect, and I do wanna highlight that, right? Even if you're working with somebody and they don't do tax planning, say you bring it up and they say they don't. I would say if that was my situation and they said, "Hey, I wanna bring in so and so to do it," that would almost give me a huge reason to stay with that person because now I see them as like, they're not trying to do something just to get it done. They value that relationship enough to bring in somebody to help you out. That's a huge
Right.
bonus.
And that's
Huge.
trust. That's right. And the goal is to get you the best result possible. You've
Right.
gotta absolutely, yeah. So they're establishing trust with you in that scenario.
Mhm.
Um, so trust is number one. Accreditation, like I kind of spilled the beans on that. Number two, are they like John? You could set up a sign in front of your house and say Johnny T's Tax Shop, and you could actually prepare tax returns for people. It doesn't mean you're accredited. So again, making sure they have the accreditation that fits you. Now understand, even if you are a CPA, an enrolled agent, or a tax attorney, that doesn't mean we know everything about the tax code. It's like saying a doctor knows every little medical rule, every prescription. No, we all have some of us are more generalists, some of us are more specialists, some of us have strengths in different industries and different forms. And understand that conversation has to occur in the beginning, and that's part of establishing trust, saying, I mean, John, we have clients in our CPA firm that are CPAs because you know why? They don't do tax work. They do audit work. They do business valuations. They don't know the bonus depreciation numbers this year, and they don't need to. And I don't know what all the disclosures are when you're preparing audited financial statements because that's not my passion.
Yeah, and you mentioned EAs earlier. I would say at these events we go to, you could throw 50 EAs in a room and 50 CPAs, and I almost bet that most people, I mean, you being in the industry probably can, you could not tell the difference in a conversation, and nothing against some CPAs, but I've met some EAs that are a million times better than a couple people that passed the test for CPAs.
Right. I
It's
mean,
incredible.
so yeah, EAs are super talented people. So make sure that the person you're working with is accredited. And part of that accreditation is making sure that they have continuing education requirements that they've fulfilled. I mean, that's so important. Just because you passed a test 25 years ago or took a tax course 25 years ago has nothing to do with today. You've got to make sure someone's going in for continuing education. So accreditation is important. And then the final thing on the TAX is X factor. The X factor means what on paper, yes, they could prepare your return. You could be their client, but what do they have that they excel in? What do they do better than other people? And like in our private CPA firm, we don't do a tons of things, but what we do, we feel like we do on a world-class level. So, and we can't, and on the quite frankly, on the private CPA side, I mean, we're not only going to work with 30 new full membership clients for the year. So this isn't an advertisement for that. That means what our X factor is versus your X factor. Your X factor might be, you know what? I'm mature aged. I like to go in with my tax documents. I like to have a warm chocolate chip cookie and a coffee and sit down and talk to my tax professional. I'll catch up. There are tax professionals out there that still operate in that, in a physical office, and that X factor is what the client wants. Or the X factor might be, wow, these guys know tax planning really well. Wow, they know technology really well. Oh, they know my industry really well. They're responsive. They are, they're respect. So you got to think about that the X factor is because if there's no X factor, then the tax return's a commodity. And if a tax return's a commodity, then it's there's no value put in it. You're not, the, John, you know this. I mean, it's daily that I hear because in the role in this private CPA practice, I see all the leads come in, and number one, my tax professional doesn't do tax planning. Okay, well, understand that that's a two-way street, and if that's the X factor you're looking for, we might be a good fit. But there could be other, there could be other X factors, right? I mean, so figuring out why that person's a good fit, and it could be, I mean, it could be something that, let's say you are English isn't your first language and you're a taxpayer and you need a multilingual, bilingual tax professional. We have friends that are bilingual, quite a bit of friends that are bilingual in our community in the tax program, and they do really well in those communities. Or um, I have a tax professional I've coached a little bit that only works with female entrepreneurs that live in the United States but are originally from Africa. That's just her niche. That's her X factor. She could prepare returns for other people, but that's her X factor. So focus on trust, accreditation, and what that X factor is, and you will find that right tax professional. I think it's good to do a little due diligence before, ask people for a referral, and understand, especially that first year, it's not going to be perfectly smooth, but there's a synergy with working with the same firm year over year.
Absolutely. And let's wrap on this here really quick. Chris, I'm taking away from this, and I think you would agree, it really is a dating scenario. It's not a just, oh, I need a tax pro. They need to work with me to run their business. It's not like that. We have that retirement cliff. Supply and demand has shifted where the importance of selecting the right person for you is just as important for that person, that tax pro to work with the right person for their business and their progress, right?
Yep. And I'm going to close on this. Price should be a factor, but it shouldn't be the main factor. You're going to get what you pay for typically. That doesn't mean go crazy. It just means make make sure that it's a factor, but it's not your number one. If I needed a filling, I wouldn't just go to the dentist that can give me the cheapest filling. It'd be really painful.
Perfect way to explain it. So anybody you're listening to this, if you need a referral to somebody, as Chris mentioned, this is not a sales pitch. We're not going to work with everybody in the private practice. There's limitations there, but we can find somebody for you. If you really need a referral, we're happy to do that. We have an endless proverbial Rolodex of people we can probably connect you with. So don't feel shy, reach out. We won't get into anything else right now because we got some great topics coming up again in a couple weeks. So we will see everybody back here again next week on the Teaching Tax Flow podcast. Have a good week, everybody.
The content provided is for educational purposes only. We encourage you to seek personalized investment advice from your financial professional. For all tax and legal advice, please consult your CPA or attorney. Investment advisory services are offered through Cabin Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cabin Securities, a registered broker-dealer. The content of this podcast does not constitute an offer of securities. Offerings can only be made through an offering memorandum, and you should carefully examine the risk factors and other information contained in the memorandum.